Cleopatra is known for many things, but a lesser-known fact about her is that she married not one, but two of her brothers. Both of them were called Ptolemy. In fact, everyone back then seemed to be called Ptolemy, including her father, but that's a story for another day. The real reason behind these marriages is that she didn't marry her brothers out of love, but out of political necessity. In ancient Egypt times, women were not allowed to rule without a male consort as a co-ruler, so in order to maintain her position as ruler, she chose to marry her brothers on two separate occasions. But Cleopatra wasn't particularly happy about this and wanted to lead Egypt alone. After sidelining her younger brother and first husband, Ptolemy XIII, a civil war broke out between them, and with the help of Julius Caesar, she defeated him in 47 BC when he drowned in the Nile River while fleeing. To continue keeping her place on the throne, she then married her youngest brother, Ptolemy XIV, who was about 12 years old at the time. He had very little power since Cleopatra ruled Egypt with Julius Caesar by her side. But after Caesar's assassination in 44 BC, she most likely poisoned Ptolemy XIV so that her son Caesarion could become co-ruler instead. Mansa Musa is still the richest man who has ever lived. Despite the best efforts of billionaires like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, it's a 14th century emperor of Mali in West Africa who still holds the record for holding the most wealth. Historians have calculated that Mansa Musa was worth a gargantuan $400 billion, roughly, in today's modern currency. For context, Jeff Bezos is only holding about 1/4 of that amount. Musa was so incredibly generous that when he traveled to Mecca, he gave out so much gold on the way that it depreciated its value and caused a severe economic crisis in the Middle East. Realizing the damage he had done, Mansa tried to fix the situation by buying back gold at higher prices to restore its value. But in Cairo, everyday goods became so expensive that it took over a decade for the region's economy to recover. The ancient Mayans worshipped turkeys as gods. Marcus Crassus was a wealthy Roman politician who started the first known fire brigade in history. He would only save burning buildings if the owner agreed to sell the property at a low price. If not, he would simply just allow the property to burn. He would then buy the burned property at an even lower price than the one originally offered and rebuilt them for profit. This ruthless strategy helped Crassus become one of the wealthiest men in Rome, gaining political influence and forming the first triumvirate with Julius Caesar and Pompey. His fire brigade is often seen as an early example of capitalism and corruption, illustrating how even essential services can be manipulated for profit. When Lo Pai, a Chinese-American businessman and senior Enron executive, was caught having an affair with an exotic dancer, he was forced to resign from the company and sell his shares for $280 million to divorce his wife and marry the stripper. The company then collapsed a few months later. Some might call him the luckiest man alive, because if he didn't cheat on his wife, he would have gone down with the company. In ancient Rome, although female gladiators were rare, they did exist. They underwent rigorous training, and unlike their male counterparts, they weren't a regular feature of the gladiator games, but were mainly used as a novelty form of entertainment in the arena. While some Romans admired their skills, others viewed them as scandalous. Emperor Septimus Severus eventually banned them in the 3rd century AD due to growing societal disapproval. Charles II was king, even when he wasn't. For a brief period in the 1600s, England didn't have a king. After Charles I had been removed from the throne and had his head taken off, he was replaced by Oliver Cromwell, who acted as the Lord Protector. Eventually, after Oliver's demise, his son took over, but was completely rubbish at the job, so they decided to try establishing a monarchy again. It was then that Charles II retook the throne in 1660, and Parliament decided that his reign actually started on the day that his father was executed 11 years earlier, even though he wasn't even in the country when it happened. They sort of just pretended as if the Cromwell years didn't happen. Spain once declared war on Denmark and forgot about it for 172 years. Nothing happened, and there were literally no battles or injuries. Denmark also didn't seem to notice or care because it was more focused on its own struggles with Britain and Sweden. The war had only been discovered in 1981 when a historian researching old documents found the forgotten declaration of war, realizing that Spain and Denmark had technically been at odds with each other without even knowing it. Shortly after, both countries came together to formally sign a peace treaty, officially ending their invisible conflict. The ancient Romans loved their dogs just as much as people do today. In some cases, we have more information about their dogs and what they did with them than other aspects of Roman life, and when their dogs died, many of them were given elaborate graves with highly decorative tombstones. They often carved out poems or wrote in length about how much they'll miss them. These dog graves were considered sacred, and vandalizing them was a major crime that could get you tried in a Roman court. Out of all 2,000-plus passengers aboard the Titanic, Masabumi Hosono was the only Japanese person on the ship when it sank on April 15, 1912. His survival, however, caused widespread condemnation in Japan when he was criticized and called a coward by the mainstream media for not going down with the ship. On the night of the disaster, Hosono initially accepted his fate when he realized that most lifeboats were prioritized for women and children. But as the chaos unfolded, he saw an opportunity when a crew member shouted that there were extra spaces open in a lifeboat. Seeing another man rush in, Hosono followed and managed to secure a spot on the lifeboat. But unlike many survivors who were welcomed back home, Hosono was met with harsh criticism upon his return, since the values of Japan were rooted in the samurai code of Bushido, which emphasizes the importance of self-sacrifice and honor. His actions were seen as dishonorable, and his employer dismissed him from his job, while the newspapers branded him a coward for surviving. Hosono lived the rest of his life under the shadow of condemnation and kept a low profile until his demise in 1939. Devin Gaines was a 22-year-old college student who attracted media attention when he earned 5 bachelor's degrees simultaneously in 5 years. He graduated in May of 2007 with 276 credits. Unfortunately, just 2 months later in July, he drowned in a gravel pit quarry while swimming with friends. Napoleon had a brother who lived in New Jersey. Joseph Bonaparte was the former king of Spain and Naples, but after Napoleon's defeat in 1815, he fled to the United States and settled on Bordentown, New Jersey, where he lived on a luxury estate called Point Breeze. Julius Caesar had a seizure during a military campaign in 49 BC. The first Star Wars movie was released in the same year that France carried out its last execution by guillotine. Although the guillotine was a punishment most widely associated with the French Revolution in the late 18th century, it was still used as a method of execution well into the 20th century. In fact, the last person to be executed by guillotine in France was Tunisian immigrant Hamida Jandoubi in September 1977, which is the same year that George Lucas's epic blockbuster film Star Wars was first shown on the big screen. Sally Hemings was just 16 years old when she gave birth to her first child with a 51-year-old Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States. During World War II, a Great Dane named Juliana was awarded with a Blue Cross medal after extinguishing a bomb by peeing on it. The modern Oval Office was only created in 1934, and it was designed so that President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who used a wheelchair, could move easily between the offices and the residence. Ketchup was originally sold as medicine in the 1830s. And in 1834, the idea was popularized by Dr. John Cook Bennett, who claimed that tomato-based ketchup could cure ailments like indigestion, diarrhea, and even rheumatism. Eventually, the fad faded as fraudulent health claims were exposed, and by the late 19th century, Henry J. Heinz helped standardize the recipe and production of ketchup as a condiment. Switzerland accidentally invaded Liechtenstein during an operation taking place in heavy fog. The soldiers simply walked too far during a maneuver, ending up in Liechtenstein. The Swiss also accidentally bombed Liechtenstein with artillery fire, and Liechtenstein accepted the apologies from Switzerland both times.